It's January 4th, 2025. I'm Todd Dunn, and it's about 2:30 on Saturday afternoon, and today it's about 25 degrees out, but the wind has dropped off, so it's actually fairly comfortable out, particularly if you're in the sun. And that brings up what I want to talk about today, which is winter weather here on Mount Desert Island, and in particular, here on the southern part of the island, which is the ocean-facing side of the island. The northern part of the island faces across Frenchman Bay toward the mainland and is only, 3 or 4 miles out. So it doesn't get the full effect of the ocean in the winter. So anyway, that's the view from where I'm sitting right now. That's the ocean. And the reason I'm bringing the ocean up is, as you can see, it's January 4th, and the ocean is not frozen. In fact, the ocean does not freeze here. And right now, I took a look at the offshore buoy, which is about 7 miles from where I'm sitting, and the ocean water temperature is about 44 degrees. So it's pretty warm. And given that the air temperature is 25, the water temperature is almost 20 degrees warmer than the air temperature. So that means that on a day like this, if the wind is coming off the water, we will have a relatively warm day. If the wind is coming off the land, off the mainland, we might have a colder day. And in fact, that's what's happening today. The wind is kind of out of the northwest, and which is off the mainland, which makes it considerably cooler. But it just takes a wind shift, and the temperature out here will rise. And furthermore, ocean temperatures generally don't get much colder than the upper 30s, even in March, which is about the minimum ocean temperature here. So now that has not always been the case. When I first came here, ocean temperatures got down into the mid to low 30s, and there was a fair amount of surface ice in sheltered coves and that sort of thing. And I have even seen Southwest Harbor have a skim of ice on it at least halfway out the harbor, maybe even further. And that wasn't that long ago, but it certainly hasn't happened in the last few years, because they say the Gulf of Maine, which is the part of the Atlantic Ocean we're looking at right now, is warming faster than just about any other body of water on the planet's surface. And that's noticeable. In the 25 years I've been here, I'd say the median, minimum winter temperature has gone up, 5 or 6 degrees. That's a lot. And it has affected our weather, particularly out here on the southern part of Mount Desert Island, which is the ocean-facing side. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when I first came here, it would snow sometime late November, early December, and that snow would stay on the ground all winter. It might warm up a few times during the winter, and there'd be some melting, but the wouldn't melt all the snow, and so we would end up with quite an accumulation of snow. And I remember years in my driveway where I had around the outside of the driveway 5 feet of snow piled up. Now right now, on January 4th, 2025, I have 0 snow in my yard. Yeah, we had snow last week, but then we had a warm stretch, and it all melted. And the same has happened pretty much everywhere on Mount Desert Island. The only place you'll find any snow on the island now is maybe in a sheltered spot that doesn't get any sun and is even sheltered from significant rain, because it did rain over an inch last week and the temperature was up around 50 degrees. Or in a spot where a snowplow piled the snow up and it has not all melted. That's true on the shady part of my driveway where I pushed all the snow off of my driveway after the 7 inches we had. And there's still a little bit of snow there, maybe 6-8 inches of piled up, but it's not much. And we're not forecast to get any precipitation of any kind for the next 10 days. So we're going to make it to mid-January with no snow on the ground. And that, is not unusual. The last few years have been very low snow years. And even when it does snow, it has all melted off within just a few days. So the conditions right now, basically no snow on the ground, have become fairly typical for the bulk of the winter here on the southern part of the island. Now that's not to say that we couldn't have a cold, snowy winter where we get a bunch of snow dumped on us and it stays for a while, but at least for the last 4 or 5 years, it simply has not happened. I don't think we've had a snowfall over about 8 inches for a number of years. And it's not at all unusual for daytime temperatures when the wind swings around, so it's off the ocean, which is anywhere from southwest to east. It's not unusual for the temperatures to go up to pretty close to the water temperature, which this time of year would put us in the 40s. And even when the water temperature in the ocean is at its minimum, would put us in the upper 30s. So above freezing. And the only time we get cold weather here is when we have a big high pressure system sitting over the area and we get a protracted period of wind off the mainland. Then it can get cold, and which is what's going to happen over the next week. Temperatures are supposed to get lower and lower every day as we have persistent winds off the mainland. And we're going to be looking at daytime highs in the low 20s and lows in the teens, maybe down to as low as 10 degrees. And it can get below zero. I think there have been, 8 or 10 nights when it went down below zero here in the 26 years that I've been here, but it isn't common. And it's always just a nighttime temperature, never lasts very long. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the weather here. It is getting warmer. I mean, right now, if you stepped outside 25 degrees and about a 15-mile-an-hour wind, it wouldn't feel very warm. But believe me, on a clear, sunny day like this, with just a little bit of cloud offshore, that isn't bad. And all it takes is for the wind to swing around and come off the water, and it will warm right up. And that has had some other impacts. One of the things I used to like to do here was go into Acadia National Park onto the carriage roads in the winter because they set tracks for cross-country skiing, or at least they used to. And so you could go up there and cross-country ski for miles and miles on the set tracks, which was very pleasant. The carriage roads are graded for horse-drawn carriages, so they do have ups and downs, but they're not steep, and they're easily skiable on cross-country skis. But for at least 10 years now, what happens is it'll snow, we'll get enough snow, and they'll get in there the next day and set the tracks, and then you can go skiing. Maybe for one day, and then it will warm up and snow will start melting, it'll rain, and what was nice skiing will turn into a sheet of ice. Another factor is on a day like this, you can go into the park and walk a lot of the trails. I would not advise the steep, rocky trails, the ones with handholds and things like that, because they are susceptible to getting icy when we have weather like this, where a week ago we had rain and there's still water draining down gradually, and that can, when it drops below freezing suddenly, that can ice up the rocks and those steep trails become extremely dangerous because the rocks get coated with ice. So, but the carriage roads and the level trails are generally pretty good. Like right now, I could probably go walk Ship's Harbor or Wonderland and not see much of any ice except for maybe a frozen puddle here and there that would be easy to avoid. But what happens is it will snow, and then it will warm up, and the snow will partially melt, and then it will go back down below freezing, and that snow will ice up. And it can make the carriage roads in particular basically into kind of skating rinks and make them kind of treacherous, even though they're relatively flat, but they can be very slippery. But at least nowadays you can get into the park quite a bit in the winter where there's very little, if any, snow on the ground. But then, a week later, there might be 8 or 10 inches on the ground. But as I said, that will normally melt off, or at least partly melt off, fairly quickly. And down here at sea level, right now I'm sitting about, maybe 4 or 5 feet above sea level. It'll melt off completely, and it'll look like it does right now, which is not any snow in sight anywhere. So anyway, that's what I wanted to do, just talk a little bit about the winter weather here. It is certainly not as cold and not as snowy as pretty much anywhere inland. And that makes for, at least weather-wise, a relatively mild winter for Maine here. In fact, these islands off the coast, like here, Swans Island, Matinicus Island, Monhegan Island, etc., are some of the spots where you'll have the mildest weather in Maine in the winter. Now, that's not to say that if you go inland to Bangor, it won't be minus 15 on a day when it might be right around freezing here. That happens all the time. And if you go up to Caribou, well, it's always going to be cold up there in the winter. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. The weather here on the ocean side of Mount Desert Island on the coast of Maine. Hope you found it interesting. Thanks for watching.